Well, thank you. Thank you for the introduction on social media and just now. My name's Sonia H. I'm grateful to be here, and I've been excited to share tonight. I don't usually get excited about sharing my story. I have a lot of anxiety, and putting myself in a position that causes me even more anxiety is not something I choose to do very often. But for whatever reason, tonight I've been thinking about where I came from and where my life is today, and um, the growth that has occurred in my life recently. And as I have moved through my recovery, just how far I've come. Um, I got clean in 93, July 4th of 93. So this summer I picked up 27 years. So, um, and I always talk about like how I came into the program through the back door. Um, and I used to not share about how exactly I came into the fellowship, and got clean and sober, because somehow I felt like it didn't I didn't qualify as well as other people did, and that really bothered me. And so I'm going to talk about that a little bit tonight, just for anybody who thinks that they have to do more to qualify. Um, we don't. We don't have to go to those places that some people do in their 50s, their 60s, their 70s before they finally get clean and sober. And half their life is gone, and they've missed out on raising their children, or they've been institutionalized most of their life. You don't have to wait till you get to that place. So I want to talk a little bit about that tonight. And I've given a lot of thought about that today, and whether or not that was something I was willing to disclose. Because I did. I did get clean when I was 20. I turned 21 when I only had a couple weeks clean and sober. And there's a story I have about that. I turned 21 and I couldn't legitimately I could now for the first time legitimately buy alcohol. And I thought that that was something that I really needed to do. Like I needed to have that on my scorecard somehow. And I remember going to the grocery store that day and thinking that I should probably pick something up just so I could, for at least once in my life, buy something legitimately. And I did not that night. I did consequently relapse 2 years in, and bought a great deal. But anyway, that's a whole nother part of my story. So I'll just start at the beginning. I was born in Vancouver, Canada. I was there, lived there with my parents into my early teens, and my parents divorced when I was about 6 or 7. And there was a lot of domestic violence, a lot of insecurity. My father was a very angry drunk. Consequently, he ended up with an allergy to the way that they make alcohol, and he could no longer drink. But he continued to be a very angry, dry drunk, and has continued that behavior into my adulthood. I struggle a lot when I'm in his presence. I think I see him, and I see what my future would have looked like had I not had gotten sober and clean. I would just be as angry and bitter, resentful, self-important, all of those things that I become when I don't have a program in my life. When I'm not actively working a program in my life, going to meetings and staying connected, that is the person that I become. And I can revert back to that self-centered person pretty quickly. So that's just part of my story. But so my parents divorced, my mother left my dad, and he froze all of the bank accounts, left us in a really bad position. Couldn't eat, couldn't buy clothes. It was, he tried to make it so that he would force her to come back. It didn't happen. My mother's German. Once she makes her mind up, that's just the way that it's going to be. And she will figure it out. So I have a funny story about that. One night, we didn't have any clothes, and my mother had climbed into a Goodwill dumpster, and the police came. They found my mother in this Goodwill dumpster, and saw these two little kids, and they were like, "Ooh, she probably needs that stuff," and they let her go. And so that was part of a funny story that I have from being a kid, and this very crazy German mother that now works for me. She's just an incredibly tenacious woman, and when she makes her mind up, that's just the way that the wind's going to blow her. So my mother ended up meeting an American, and she left for the United States and left me back in Canada, and they got married, and she sent for me, and I came to the US as a teen, early teen, maybe 11, 12, 13, somewhere around there. And I was not happy. I struggled. I was different. I am now a West Coast Canadian kid living in the Deep South. I didn't understand the culture. I felt like I had just dropped onto a new planet. I did not feel accepted by my peers. It was a struggle to be in the States. And the man my mother married had a very different philosophy of raising children. He was a retired Marine, and there was it was hard. It was hard. He believed in a belt strap and good behavior, and I had never experienced that personally. My parents used to have these knockout, drag out fights, and my dad would backhand me every now and again, but I'd never experienced a leather strap before, and by a stranger, really. And I struggled in that relationship, but he died shortly after we got here. And I found him in a pool. I actually watched him fall into the pool and float on top. And I jumped in after him and pulled him out, and I gave him CPR for about 25 minutes. But he lived for about 2 or 3 days, and he died. And my mother was devastated. I think for my mom, it was the first time she'd ever felt safe. She'd ever felt cared for, and the struggle for her had ended. The living hand to mouth, alone raising two kids, she had finally had the support that she had been looking for her whole life. And so her life imploded immediately. She was fairly young. I mean, I guess, now that I'm 50, I think about what that must have looked like at 35 or something. So for her, she just was not equipped to handle the devastation of his death. And she was now living in a country she wasn't familiar with, without friends, without family, and we were alone. And I was sent to boarding school. So I immediately left for boarding school, and I was there for 2 years. And the first about 6 months, I refused to speak. I was, I, I think I had always felt disposable in some way. I had always felt like at any moment, my importance, my relevance was, I just wasn't relevant in my home, in my family. And here in the States, I hadn't found a tribe of people who had accepted me for who I was. And so being sent to boarding school was like the validation that I was irrelevant. And I stayed at boarding school, couldn't leave. The girls were locked in a dorm. The boys ran freely. To this day, I resent that. It is, I think that's why I'm a feminist, Democrat. Everybody vote Biden. Joking, but not joking. So I really advocate for women's rights today. I think being locked in a dorm, watching boys be able to run around and use the gym and do whatever they wanted to do has left me with some work, probably some work still to do. But nonetheless, so I ended up coming out of boarding school, and I don't think I was home 2 weeks, and I just left. I think I decided that I had a better shot living on the streets. And I was angry. I didn't know what to do with my anger. I didn't know what to do with the resentment that I felt towards my mother. And I had started dating this guy, and he had an apartment. He was probably 15 years older than me. Moved on into that apartment with him. No furniture, I don't think, but he supplied me with lots of alcohol. And I lived there for a short period of time. My life began to spiral pretty quickly. I knew of some friends who had rented a house on the east side of Winston, which is not a good neighborhood, but it was a 1-bedroom apartment, and there were 5 of us living there. And I was the only female. I moved in there, and it was nothing but a drug house. And we just used. We got high, we drank, we had parties, and I pretty much stayed in a blackout for the next couple of years. I met a guy, and he seemed like he would be the answer really to all that needed curing in my world. So he rescued me from this dismal existence and moved me in with him. And after about a year, his mother sent him to treatment. And he went to treatment for 30 days and came back and said that I had to go. And I was not expecting that because I didn't have a problem. I mean, like maybe his mom thought he had a problem, but I didn't have a problem. But I knew that I couldn't stay. He wouldn't let me stay if I didn't go. There was some resolve that had happened in him in treatment where I think he wanted a different life than he was living. And he wanted me to be a part of that with him, but I couldn't stay unless I went. So I didn't believe I had a problem. I didn't know why he was sending me. But in order to maintain and keep that relationship and a place to live, I went, and I got on a plane and I went to South Dakota. There was not a stoplight in the town. There was nothing. It used to be an old gold mining town, and you could see these old buildings from our treatment center that used to be like, they probably back in the day, they were a lot of fun. I probably would have found my way into any one of those buildings, but they were all abandoned now, and it was just this one treatment center. And actually, it was a hotel that had been converted into a treatment center. I think it was called like the Golden Nugget Hotel or something. And now it was like the Golden Nugget Treatment Center. So I ended up there, and I got in touch with a lot of things that you get in touch with when you finally sober up, right? So I went through a very specific type of treatment, and with some other people who understood me, understood where I was at, and didn't try to change the fact that I didn't think I needed to be there. There was no sugar allowed at my treatment center. There was no nicotine allowed at my treatment center. And they ransacked all of my belongings before I went to my room. So they confiscated my uh, cigarettes, my everything. So there I am in this place in the middle of nowhere. I mean, even if I wanted to run away, where was I going to go? So I had nowhere to go. And so I stayed, and I learned a lot. I learned a lot about my trauma. I learned a lot about my pain. I learned a lot about my losses, my sadness, my grief, my frustrations, my low self-esteem. There was a lot I learned from that place. They actually brought somebody in from the outside to talk to me, because my denial. I think everybody else that was there was they they signed up for it. They knew what they were getting into. They wanted to be there. They wanted a different life, and I was not that person. And they cared about my path, and they let me know that I was 20 and I could do this at 20, or I could do this at 30, or I could do this at 40, or I could be 70 checking in. And I still didn't believe that that was my destiny. But they brought someone in, and they had me fill out all these little papers. And I remember this one paper they had me fill out, and it was, have you ever, that paper, have you ever done this or this or this? And now I'm studying this stuff, so I'm familiar with these papers, right? And so I fill out this paper, and I think it probably had maybe 20 questions on it, right? And I had a good probably 15 to 18 check marks. Of course, everybody does that. Every good party girl has this story, right? And when they gave me the results and they said, well, if you have two checked, you have a problem. And I thought, two? Who are you? Like, everybody's got more than two checked. So it was the it was the it was that moment where I thought, oh, I mean, not everybody lives this lifestyle. Not everybody does that. So there was a small moment of clarity, where I started to believe that I might have a problem. And it was just a big enough crack in the door that I became willing to listen and learn and be teachable. So when my program was done, they wished me well. I signed this piece of paper that said I was willing to go to 9 meetings. I don't know where I came up with that number. I think they probably gave me a good round number, like 10 or 20. And I think I negotiated that down to 9. So I and there's something about signing my name to a document. Like, I think I was mostly willing to do 9. So I remember being in the airport in I think it was Rapid City. I think there's an airport in Rapid City. But I went to the airport and I called the guy, and I said, okay, David, I'm done with my program. I'm so excited to come home. And he had taken my dope, which I had left, and he had gotten high. He had relapsed while I'd been gone, and he had cheated on me. And I was devastated, and I didn't know what to do from there. So was I going back homeless? Was I just going to accept what had happened while I'd been gone? I had just spent several weeks in probably one of the most freeing and magical places of my life. And the door to devastation was thrown open, and I felt completely and utterly broken. I knew there was a reason I didn't want to get sober. There was a reason I didn't want to get clean. How do you deal with devastation when you're raw? How do you deal with brokenness, utter and complete brokenness, without anesthetizing yourself? I don't know how to do that. So I got back, I flew into Greensboro, and he picked me up, and we went to a meeting. I had agreed to 9 meetings, and I didn't know what else to do. They told me that meetings would save my life, and that is how I ended up in a meeting. Prior to that treatment experience, I'd never heard about AA, NA, CODA, Overeaters Anonymous. I didn't know about any of it. Never heard about any of it. So I found myself in actually a Narcotics Anonymous meeting. I didn't care what meeting we went to. In fact, my paperwork at the time said NA or AA meetings. Didn't matter. Find a 12-step program and get involved. So I end up in this meeting, and he picks up a white chip. He picks up a chip of surrender. And I'm thinking, I'm not surrendering to anything. I'm going to control the information flow. I am going to control the outcome of this. I'm going to figure out how to put my life back together. I said nothing. I sat by the door, and I proceeded to do that for the next 2 years. I sat by the door. I did not get involved. I did not want to work steps. I did not want to sponsor. I did not want women in my life. I had been cheated on, and I had been devastated. And the last thing I was going to do was invite some more of that into my life. So I continued to show up to meetings. I found they were inspiring. They made me want to be a better person, but only better in that I could still control the information flow. So I still got what I got. Like I realized I was hopeful, but not getting better. And it wasn't until I made a choice to get involved that I started getting better. So there is where my recovery story begins. I relapse about then. And that was a really important part of my story, because prior to that, I still didn't think I qualified. Prior to that experience, being in AA and NA meetings, I heard about people eating out of trash cans. I heard about people with needles in their arms. I heard about homelessness and all of those things that I couldn't relate to. And I saw the differences and not the similarities. But after my relapse, I saw the similarities, and I stripped myself of those last reservations. So for me, anytime someone says they've had a relapse, I think it's amazing. I think it's a miracle. I think there's probably something much greater that's come out of the experience, because that had been my personal experience. So it was the final piece of my recovery puzzle that helped me to get in the game of recovery. So I got a sponsor. I started working steps. I started sponsoring women. Um, and once I started sponsoring women, that was a complete game changer for me. Um, Seeing people grab the miracle of recovery changed my being. It changed my spirit. It invigorated my recovery. Um, and my whole life became about empowering women. Um, it became about um, suiting up and showing up and going into the trenches. And um, and I'm not talking about rescuing anybody. I'm not talking about saving anybody. I'm talking about women who are on fire for a different life. I will walk in the fire. It is, it's inspiring. I've had a front row seat to some of the biggest miracles I've ever seen. I sponsor about 10 women, and many of them have been with me for many years. Um, and they know my flaws, they know my character defects, they make fun of them. Um, and they love me despite them. And I feel like I came into recovery through the back door, um, and I threw the front doors open when I finally got it. Like I kicked them open and I said, "Bring it." And I have been on fire for recovery ever since. So about I don't know how long, 18 feels like forever ago, I decided to make a career change. um i um I got my bachelor's when I had a couple years clean. I had always wanted to go back to college, not because I wanted to do anything different with my life, but I had failed out of high school and I wanted to undo that. It had affected my life, and I wanted to change that. I wanted to rewrite that ending, and I went back to college, and I loved it. I loved learning. It was a all women's college, small all women's college, all about female empowerment. It was an amazing experience. I went from uh, failing out of high school, feeling like a loser, and making nothing but A's and B's in college while having two little children and running a full-time business. I've been an entrepreneur almost my entire life, actually. And so I I I I just I rocked it. Like it was like I'm not dumb. I'm actually kind of smart, and my teachers think I'm cool and they give me good grades, and this is awesome. So I filled I'm going to tell this only because I think it's funny that my final paper I filled out on a typewriter. I turned in on a typewriter because that long ago I didn't own a computer, and I don't even know if I don't think computers were readily available. I think they were in like libraries and stuff, but I had two little kids and that a library was not where I was going. So I filled out I don't even know how many pages, like 20 pages of my final paper on a typewriter. And so now here I am, all these years later. I've decided that I did so well getting my bachelor's. Surely I can change careers in my 50s and I can get a master's and do what I love doing, be around people I love, and get a counseling degree for substance abuse and get my master's. So I show up for the first like couple weeks of school, getting my master's, and I don't even understand how to maneuver the website. And I don't know how to write these papers. I keep losing them. Where do they go? I can't find them again. They're taking me hours to write. My professors are sending me messages that my language is not scholarly enough. It doesn't take me very long before I am right back in the high school mindset. I'm a loser and I can't do this. The difference was I had the most amazing support of my entire life. I went into meetings and I shared about how I felt like a loser. I shared about how the wheels were falling off my bus. I went in there almost every single meeting and talked about sobbing, talking about how I didn't think I could get through this. There was no way. I didn't have the skill set. I didn't know how to use a word program. I didn't know how to write in a scholarly way. It was the first 3 months were devastating for me. Every day I wanted to quit, but every day I had women in my corner telling me that they would support me if I quitted. They would support me, but I didn't have to. And they would help me. And I started having some women show up in my life who knew how to write. And they said, send me what you've got. And they started teaching me how to write. I had some women who knew how to do Word, and they would come and to my house and they would say, this is how you move this document around. This is how you change things to italics. This is how you make things bold. I'm talking about the most basic stuff I had to learn in a master's program because I hadn't been in school in 25 years. So, I say that because the women in the program suited up and showed up for me in a way that I had been suiting up and showing up for them for years. I got to witness the miracle of their sobriety, but I feel like they're watching the miracle of change happen in me. And I have always had a very difficult time sharing my process. So when I'm struggling with something, typically what I do is I will pull the blinds. I will not share my process. I will come out of it and tell you about how I came through it. But they've had a front row seat to my process, because if I'm going to get through this, I've got to share the process in all of its glory. As I come unraveled, they seem to ravel me back together. And I graduate in July, and I almost feel like I can do it now. There are days now where I'm just like, I don't want to do this. And I go up into my office and I do it anyway. Because one thing about the program, it's taught me how to do stuff despite myself. Because I've stayed clean for 27 years, and there have been many times I have not wanted to stay clean. But because I've had practice doing shit that I just don't want to do, I have had this incredible opportunity to like apply that to my real life. And now I'm doing some stuff every day that I don't want to do. I don't want to write that paper. I don't want to dig that deep. I don't want to do that research. I don't want to come up it's almost like my whole being comes up every day against that resistance that says, you can't do this. You're not good enough. This is never going to get done. This will never be over. But slowly, one day at a time, which is what I've learned in here, is one day at a time, I'm just doing it. And I'm finding these small pockets of joy. I'm finding that I'm growing through this experience. I'm allowing people to be there for me, which is, I never thought that I would be able to do that, is really allow someone to see my very vulnerable underbelly and be there for me, and see just how broken I feel, and how that brokenness is still part of it's still part of who I am. And I continue to just do it scared every day. And I'm incredibly grateful to the miracle of recovery. I'm incredibly grateful that I have stayed clean enough, long enough to show up for my life. I think it's easier for me to show up for other people's lives, but I have truly suited up and showed up for my own life. My life drastically changed about maybe 14 years ago. There were some women that came into my life, and for the first time, I felt like I had a tribe, like a real tribe of women. And my tribe grew and became very intimate and very fulfilling. And I, for the first time, felt truly joyful. And I, maybe that has something to do with why I wanted to take this leap of faith. And I've owned a furniture store for 25 years. And to go from moving furniture to being a counselor, I don't even know that they're related. So doing something so completely foreign to what I've been doing for so long is a real leap of faith. And recovery has given that gift of faith that I can, if I stay clean and sober, I can fucking do anything. And I'm so incredibly grateful to recovery. My life is the way that it is today because of it. It's not perfect, and I still act out, but it's a hell of a lot better than I think it ever would have been if I had tried to maintain some semblance of keeping my shit on the road while still trying to sprinkle some dope on it. So I'm grateful that I'm clean and sober. I'm grateful you guys asked me to share. It gave me an opportunity to do a little writing today, and think about things I hadn't thought about in a long time. So thank you for letting me be here, and that's all I've got. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Sonia. Oh my gosh, so much I can relate to. I so appreciate you being here tonight, and